What's up, everyone? I'm back with another vid, and as promised, we'll continue our look into NFL draft strategies for this year's fantasy season. Specifically, wanted to look at the zero wide receiver strategy, and as far as format, uh, it's gonna be pretty similar to my last strategy vid. So, kind of just go over the strategy itself, and then go over some rosters that I put together and evaluate them. So, with that out of the way, let's get right into this. And just a couple of disclaimers, I would say know what kind of league you're drafting in, because this kind of strategy might not be the best for a PPR league. And the reason I say that is because if you're waiting until the fifth or sixth round, you're not going to really find that big target machine if you've waited on wide receivers and targeted other guys up until then. Also, it's going to be very important where you actually pick, whether first overall all the way to 12th overall, if it's a 12-man league. Uh, so it's going to be hard to put together the best roster if you commit 100% to the strategy, and it makes you overvalue guys and reach on guys. I said the same thing in the zero running back strategy, and it holds just as much in the zero wide receiver strategy. So keep that in mind. But with that spiel out of the way, let's actually get into some of the reasons why I do think this is a valid strategy. And one of those reasons is that I think there is a big drop off in running back talent as you pass the tier of guys like Melvin Gordon, Devonta Freeman, Murray, McCoy. So ideally, if you could nab two of those guys somehow, you would pull the trigger and you wouldn't really hesitate on that because that would set you apart. Uh, and then on the flip side, uh, why you're actually allowing yourself to do that is because if you look at recent years, a wide receiver that you get in the second round, a guy like, let's say, Des Bryant, his stat line won't be that much more different than a guy maybe you can get it now in the fifth or sixth round, like a Tyreek Hill or Martavius Bryant. So is it really worth to load up on those receivers early on where you can get some other value otherwise? And I think, again, the reason for this is because it is becoming such a pass happy league. So a lot more receivers are going to be predisposed to have good years, not just the uh, top two round guys. And having said all that, let's actually get a better look into some of the rosters that I put together. And just a quick shout out, I'm going to say first, to Fantasy Football Advice, because this is where I got this idea of comparing the actual draft to maybe a value pick that I would have done otherwise. I think that brings some, more insight to this conversation, and I thought it would be very nice to incorporate. So, as you can see, this first roster that I put together, I had the third overall pick, and when we continue on further, I put together some with the seventh and then with the 10th overall pick, so it'll be a nice little variety. But in this case, my top four picks were all running backs. And I picked David Johnson first, then Ajayi, then Lynch, and then the fourth round Powell. So my problem here is that I did draft this in a PPR league, so um, I would have liked it if at least two out of those first three picks uh, brought something more to the table as pass catchers. Obviously, David Johnson is an excellent runner and also an excellent pass catcher, but I can't say the same for Ajayi and Lynch. So, in my opinion, that kind of overvalues their actual stock. But nonetheless, I definitely would have the best set of running backs if I went this route. And just for uh, an added measure, I did take Powell in the fourth round, and afterwards I started making that run on receivers, and I went with Martavius Bryant, then followed up with Moncrief. I think both those guys are very quality. I was surprised Moncrief lasted till the seventh round, especially because he's in his rookie year, end of his rookie year now contract, so he'll be playing, I think, pretty inspired football. Also, I grabbed up Olsen, who I think is going to be an excellent pass catcher. So I somewhat salvaged the situation, but I think if you look at the value picks on the right side, you'll see that I feel like I could have put together a little bit better of a roster. And let me just say that the quarterback picks won't change here at all. I kind of put those together, just to fill out the roster. But I stuck with David Johnson. I stuck with the Jai at with the second r- round pick, and a big part of that was because actually of the recent reports with Tannehill going out for the season. I do think Ajayi will have a bigger role in that offense, so I was okay with having him on my roster. And then third overall, I picked Keenan Allen, and I've said it before. I think this guy is going to be a PPR monster. From there, I upgraded the tight end position a little bit, picked up Kelsey, and then fifth round added another PPR running back, and that's Ty Montgomery. So if you ask me, I think right off the bat, in terms of value picks, I like this roster more because I have Keenan Allen. I think he's a better option than Martavius. Uh, and then I was also actually able to keep Martavius uh, by waiting in the sixth round. I've got Kelsey added, who I think is going to have a better year than Olsen, and then also have added Ty Montgomery, who should have a pretty good year at PPR wise. So that's my first roster comparison that I put together. I think the value team wins out here, and this really shows what kind of adjustment you're going to have to make if you pick early on um, and land one of those top running backs versus having a little bit later of a pick, something like here in the seventh overall pick, where you see my first pick is Shady McCoy. So maybe a little bit of a reach, but I think he'll again have a pretty good PPR year. Then again, follow that off by picking Jay Ajayi using this strategy. And again, probably a little bit overvalued, but for the sake of committing to the strategy, went with Ajayi. Afterwards, again, you'll see Lynch's name. I think he's just the next, honestly, best available running back according to my rankings. And a lot of it has to do with the offensive line he's playing behind, obviously. So that was my flex guy. The difference here is I did not take another running back with my fourth pick. Instead, I switched to the pass catchers a little bit early on. So I picked Kelsey, then I picked Tyreek Hill, and then went with Brian, and then Snead as a bench guy. So you can see that I really here went on a tear, um, on a run for wide receivers after focusing the first three picks on running backs. And again, compare that to the value picks. I think the value picks are probably a little bit better. Um, Again, I picked Shady first overall. The difference here is I waited uh, on running back a little bit. So I thought value wise, I had the option to pick TY in the second round. So I thought that was a pretty good pick. Then third round, added Keenan Allen. Uh, PPR wise, great value. Fourth round, Kelsey would have still been available, and then fifth round added that running back in Theo on the Lions. And PPR wise, I like him. If this was a standard league, probably value wise wouldn't have gone this way. Um, but again, that's why later on I also added Forte. So comparing this, personally, I like my wide receivers a lot more in this version. I've got Ty, I've got Keenan Allen, still kept Martavius Bryant, still kept Kelsey as a pass catcher. The only thing, obviously, is swapping Ajayi for Theo and Matt Forte, which uh, Ajayi will probably have a better year, but I don't think it's that much of a trade off. So, again, this is a scenario where I personally like the value picks a little bit more. And finally, let's compare this roster that I put together with a 10th overall pick. And to be honest with you, this is probably the roster I like the most. And I would be all right with the roster on the left and the one with on the right. So how it actually went down, uh, I got Melvin Gordon, 10th overall, then got DeMarco. So right off the bat, I really like that combination. Waited until the third round, added Powell as my flex. So again, I do like that. Fourth overall, again, made the transition earlier on to wide receivers. So I get Keenan Allen, then fifth round, Tyreek Hill, sixth round, get Martavius Bryant for insurance. And then the difference here is I waited a lot longer for that tight end selection, and I ended up with Jimmy Graham. So maybe that was a little bit uh, of the difference here compared to the other rosters. The tight end spot suffered a little bit. But if you compare it to the other rosters, the running back combination, much better in my opinion. And the wide receiver combination in the actual draft, also not half bad. Value wise, how I would have done this, again, honestly, very happy with my first two picks. So I would keep those. Um, and this is where the difference would start. Third, instead of taking Powell, I probably would have actually added Brendan Cooks. So make that transition to receiver earlier on again. But I think Cooks will have a good year, um, especially in that New England offense. Then still able to add Keenan Allen. Um, from there, added Tyreek Hill as my flex. So I like that. I think in PPR leagues, the wide receivers do have a little bit better of a shot in that flex position. Also, I think I upgraded my tight end with Eifert in the sixth round versus Graham. I do like what Eifert brings to the offense in Cincy. He's a big part of that. And then still was able to add Martavius Bryant later on. So I would say some of the takeaways for this is that it really depends when you make that transition into going from running back to picking a wide receiver. So I would say that the best way to do it, the takeaway is take two running backs, and if you do, uh, make that transition to wide receiver in the third round, at the latest, fourth round. I think that'll maximize your roster potential. And, kind of after going through this, let me know what you think in terms of how the rosters turned out, which roster option you guys liked the most, and whether you agree with my value picks or not. And obviously, whether the actual or the value pick roster was better. So, as always, give me some of your feedback. Uh, like, subscribe, and keep in tune for future strategy vids. I'll put out a couple more, and I'll see you guys then.